In today's lesson, we're going to discuss how to approach soloing over minor chord progressions. The backing track we're going to use has chords that come up in tons of minor key songs. And the concepts we're going to cover will help you compose and improvise solos over these types of tunes. My name is Jack Ruch. Get your guitar, let's get into it. The chord progression we're going to work with today is in the key of A minor. The chords are A minor, D minor, F major 7, and E dominant 7. I'm going to play the chords to the track one time so you can hear the chord progression and get a feel for the groove we're going to be playing over. The first thing I like to do when looking at a new chord progression is analyze the harmony and see what's going on. And right away I see that most of these chords belong in the key of A minor. The A minor chord, the D minor chord, and the F major 7 chord are all derived from the A natural minor scale. The only chord that stands out is the E7. The E7 is what's called a secondary dominant chord, and it's there to build tension that gets released when we cycle back to the A minor chord. And the big reason for that tension is this note G sharp, the third of this E7 chord. This G sharp is a half step below the root A, and it creates a dissonant rub that really wants to resolve. And this G sharp note is also the only note in this E7 chord that doesn't belong to the key of A minor. So it's a note we really want to pay attention to. And in fact, just by targeting that note in our solo when we get to the E7 chord can go a long way to connecting your solo to the underlying chords. For this first solo example, I'm going to use notes out of the A minor pentatonic scale in this position. But over that E7 chord, I'm going to target this note G sharp. So this approach is the first step to outlining chord changes. All we're doing is identifying the notes that make up the chords and then using these chord tones as a guideline for our soloing. The most thorough way to do this is to learn the arpeggio shapes for each one of these chords. For this, we're going to stick in the same position and we're going to work through the arpeggio shape for A minor 7, D minor 7, F major 7, and E dominant 7. So each one of these arpeggio shapes has the 4 notes in it that make up each one of these chords. Nothing extra. So as long as we stick to these notes over each one of these chords, everything we play is going to perfectly outline the chord changes. For the second solo example, I'm going to use notes just from these arpeggio shapes to outline the different changes in the chord progression. right, so now that we've talked about the basic chord tones, let's introduce a few cool chord substitutions we can use. We're still going to be looking at chord tones and arpeggio shapes. We're just going to introduce a few hip chord substitutions that work in certain parts of this chord progression. The first one is when we move from A minor to D minor. Instead of just going straight to that D minor chord, let's use another secondary dominant chord and we'll sneak a quick A7 chord in there. So A minor and then A7 to D minor. And to outline that chord, we'll use this A7 arpeggio shape. Here's an example of what this sounds like. The other chord substitution we're going to use is over the E7 chord. For this, we're going to use a G sharp diminished 7th chord. This gives us the sound of an E7 flat 9 chord and really doubles down on the whole half-step dissonance thing. For this, we're going to use this arpeggio pattern for G sharp diminished 7th. So here's solo example 3 where I'll use the arpeggios for these different chord substitutions. The A dominant 7 going to D minor and then the G sharp diminished 7th over the E7. So this should equip you with all the tools you need to solo over many types of minor key songs. All 3 of the approaches we discussed are equally useful depending on the sound you're going for. And I really encourage you to experiment with this and try these different approaches over chord progressions of your own. Until next time, happy practicing and take care.